Hello, it's Scott Manley here with episode 11 of Eve or Bust. And tonight we are mountaineering or bust. We have to travel about 100 kilometers to find a peak high enough that we can reliably launch from it. Now, if you remember, the atmosphere of Eve is really thick and pea soupy, and that's a technical term. So we need to get above as much of that as possible so we can escape the clutches of this planet. We have two vehicles that are going to travel this distance. Using the satellite maps, we have located a pair of peaks that are about 7 kilometers high. We'll know exactly when we get there, but we can travel at about 10 meters per second. If you remember, any more than that risks damaging the tires. And so traveling at that speed, we're talking about 6 hours between both vehicles. So not only did I have to do this, I am also faced with the task of actually trying to make it interesting for you guys. Now, I know Kurt J. Mack managed to do the whole Farlands or Bust thing, and he keeps it interesting, but that is Minecraft, which is, of course, full of all sorts of randomized world goodness. This is just a planet and the terrible traffic that I have to deal with on a daily basis, negotiating myself through the gridlock that is upon the Evian surface. And we're continuing over this ridge here, and every now and then, yes, we break a wheel. We can drive for a little while on the broken wheel, but really it becomes a matter of time and more wheels will get damaged. And at some point you just wonder, am I pushing my luck? Am I going to permanently break something on this? Well, eventually I decide that it's slowing me down too much and it becomes necessary to switch back to the other vehicle, which is of course a fair distance away. Not sure how far away it is at this point, but we have to travel all this way across the surface to send the repair crew to it. Now, if you remember the Apollo 17, they actually had to perform a repair on their lunar rover. It was I believe Harrison Schmitt, I may have got it wrong, but he got out of the lunar rover, and as he was walking around it, his hammer smacked into the fender on the front, or basically the mud guard or the dust guard. It's not a mud guard on the moon. Dust guard, and smash it up, and they could still drive it fine, but the problem was that the dust was getting kicked up all in their faces and everything, and it was covering all the equipment. So they performed a repair on the moon, basically. Now, note the speed of this thing when it's going downhill, 30 meters per second, by the way. Unfortunately, doesn't want to steer when you're traveling that fast. I found it impossible to steer. Note my yaw indicator trying to make this thing turn to the right. Doesn't want to do that. Has to get down to about 10 meters per second before it can actually turn. But I did discover that once it gets down below 10 meters per second, I can make it accelerate by turning left and right quickly. You know, it's kind of like Infiniglide, but on the ground. If you turn hard, then it helps you accelerate, even when you're trying to go uphill in a vehicle not really good at going uphill. Yeah, so duct tape was pressed into use. They took, I believe it was some pages off their operating manuals, which were nice, like stiff, cover cardboard or whatever, and they taped those over it, and it functioned perfectly well as a substitute dust guard, and they were able to continue with the mission. Of course, Apollo 17 was the longest Mars rover, or the longest manned rover, not Mars rover, the longest manned rover journey, I guess, in a single mission. There was only 2 other manned rovers on other planets, and they didn't travel nearly as far, let's say. They got really, by the time they were getting on their third journey out, they had decided that the lunar rover had proved so reliable that NASA Mission Control actually relaxed the restrictions on how far they could go. They normally had to stay close enough that they could get back to the LEM just by walking, but they decided that it had proved its worth, and so they could go a little further. And so there we are, watching it disappear off into the distance one more, having had a quick service stop. It continues on its epic quest to find some mountains. Is that the mountain there? No, that may look like a large mountain, but it is merely the foothill of the complex mountain range which contains these giant peaks for which I am aiming. So yeah, continuing on. There are a number of rovers that have travelled further than the Apollo 17 lunar rover, of course. Well, there's two, actually. There's Lunokhod 2, which actually holds the record. That's a Soviet rover, which, like Curiosity, is powered by a nuclear power source. It was kind of essentially like a bathtub on wheels if you look at the design for it. It's kind of interesting. But it was operated remotely with, 1.5 second delay, which must be fun to try operating something like that when you realise that what you're seeing is a couple of seconds out of date. Also note this pan back. I start to pan back to look at the mountains and say, look at these great mountains that I'm heading towards. Note my speed rising steadily as I'm paying more attention to the mountains than I am to my vehicle. 22 meters per second. Oh dear. And then at this point I'm noticing, I'm going a little fast. I should probably slow down and zoom back in, and it's still running. No broken wheels. Excellent. Of course, this is all still running at 4 times normal speed because you didn't really want to see 6 hours worth of me trying to fill time. I could talk about my current car troubles. You may or may not have heard that somebody drove into my car when it was in an intersection. Very annoying. It was a 14-year-old Mustang convertible. Yeah, when I moved to the US, I bought a convertible because, hey, it's California. I want to have a convertible. I come from a country where rain is the norm. Oh, darn. And broken wheels are the norm with this. And so, yes, it was time I replaced it. And so we've been looking, and it's really a case of analysis paralysis because, quite frankly, I'm a nerd and I want something that has at least partial electric or 100% electric. And, look, what I also really want is epically fascinating things to look at on this trip. And do I spy to the left there a rock which is suspended above the surface? Why, I believe I do. This is certainly worth investigating here. Let's go and take a look. Yes, it appears that this may be made of something called unobtainium or levitatium, maybe? Should we call it levitatium? Also known as a scenery glitch. Oh, I love physics glitches. Actually, there's no physics involved. It's just a scenery generation glitch. Which leaves us with this fascinating artifact sitting a meter or so above the surface. We have to investigate this thing. It looks rather ominous the way that it kind of hangs there in the sky in the same way that bricks don't. Oh yes, Douglas Adams reference. I just can't get enough of that. Let's send our man out to investigate. Come on, open the cargo bay. Out you get. You're the engineer and chief science officer on this trip. Tell us what you can find out about this strange artifact. Is it alien? It looks rather heavy, doesn't it? I mean, from this angle, it looks like it's, probably 20 tons easily, right? When you figure out what 1 meter is. 20 tons plus whatever, high gravity. Yeah. Do the Kerbal thing. Stand under the giant floating rock just to check that it doesn't fall underneath you, because, that's what you do when you're a Kerbal. You just... no regard for your own safety. Let's plant a flag underneath it. Gurford! What are you going to call this thing? What do we call it? We're going to call it... unobtainium. Yes, that's the material from Avatar, of course. It's actually the material from any trope, whatever. Any TV trope. TV Trope's great website. You could spend your entire life on there just finding out about things, all the tricks that we use. Let's get back in. Oh man, this thing looks awesome when you run under it. Okay, let us go on our trip once more at 4 times normal speed once again. So yeah, I've been looking at all these awesome vehicles. I think that while we have these hybrids, I'm more interested in the ones you can plug in. There's the Prius plug-in, which will travel 10 miles on a charge and will cost practically nothing for that privilege. Then there's the Volt, and then there's the Accord, and man, it is a hard job going through this and trying to pick out which car to buy and then figuring out how much it's actually going to cost. And to be honest, they're all probably going to cost me slightly more than buying a straight-up gas car. But you know what? Buying electric cars right now is kind of like a Kickstarter for a game that you really want to support. It's like, you know, you believe in it, and therefore you want to spend a little more to get those early backer privileges and things like that, and to show off your awesome nerdy control panel with all its extra details that those people driving boring old petroleum powered cars don't get to read about. Anyway, we're coming out for another quick pit stop. Wow, there's that one. Is there any more? I guess not. He's gonna continue. I figure if we burst 2 tires, that's my limit. At that point, I shall continue. Now, that looks like a rather large peak there. And I may be tempted, I was tempted to look at it and started driving towards it, and then I realized that that was not, in fact, the peak that I am going for. It is another foothill, which is rather small compared to the one that I'm aiming for. Remember, once we get to the top, we have to, it's going to be a major task to get to the top of these things. So you want to pick the right peak from the start. And after consulting the map, I realized that I needed to go west, young man. Go west, where the peaks are high. Go west, where we touch the sky. Go west, where the sky is purple. Yeah, somebody said not to sing, so it's kind of free-form poetry. Is that going to work for you? Oh, never mind. Yeah, Pet Shop Boys, they're going to be playing in the area with, who's it? Oh, Jacques Leconte supporting him. Unfortunately, it's the same weekend as Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, so I think I'm not going to get to see them, unfortunately. Yes, so going west, trying to climb up. We are basically on the side of a big... This is a foothill, I guess. We're going up. So anyway, yeah, we've been trying to pick a car for the last 2 weeks. The great thing is that because we are in the Bay Area, because we're in California, we get to try out all these extra things that aren't available in other states, because basically the Bay Area is full of people that pay extra for all these things. This is why Tesla is based here, because Tesla is full of, you know, technical people that are quite happy to pay for the best car in the world, even though it's electric powered. Oh, no, is that one broken? I thought I had a broken tire. Nope, we continued. Yes, I was really happy. I was prepared to save. I mean, I saved a couple of times because I was seriously expecting that I would fly over some bump at some point and the vehicle would like get totally destroyed, and I would have to sneakily reload it and edit that out. But I did not have to do that. I actually made it all the way over this 6 hours, or this 3+ hours worth of drive without any major damage other than the tires. And finally, look, that peak there that's on the left, that is where we are headed. That is the first, well, that is where we're heading towards. There's 2 peaks there. The one nearest me, I think maybe slightly smaller, but it should be big enough that we can actually use it. We shall find out once we get there, of course. Long way to go just yet. Many, many, many miles across the surface of Eve. I mean, if I took all the probes and all the rovers that have gone to other worlds in our solar system and all their distances that they've driven and added them all up, I'd get roughly the same distance that I have to drive in this game. And I'm driving at 36 kilometers per hour. So yeah, it took 4 hours for each of these things. It was a pain. But yeah, I was able to do this while reading about the nuances of hybrid drive systems, electric drive systems, power distribution, regenerative braking, all this wonderful nerdy stuff that makes buying a car fun, so that I could at least demonstrate some skill in the field when I was dealing with the dealer as they try to rip me off and make me pay more than I actually should. Maybe I can find a car dealer that plays Kerbal Space Program. Anyway, I shall have to climb that mountain when I come to it, because I'm climbing this mountain right now. It does not look that steep from afar, but when I get on the side of it, it looks like a good 30-degree slope easily. Well, maybe 20 degree, but it's, you know, it looks quite hard work. In fact, it is a significant amount of work to actually make this happen. If you don't use trim, then you'll find yourself wobbling back and forth as you try to maintain your speed and not go too fast and not too slow. So you have to kind of use the trim options to, gracefully adjust your speed and keep it not too fast and yet not so slow that you want to go and kill yourself by jumping into a planet with perhaps some sort of noxious atmosphere. But look, 6,760, 770. Can we get 800? I don't think this is going to be 7 kilometers high. Perhaps I will consider trying the other peak, which should be over to my left, but can't really see it in any of these shots. There is a peak. Yeah, there it is there. You see it on the left? That peak may be slightly taller, but it will, of course, require me to go down this one and back up over there. Perhaps I shall send the submarine to check it out. But 6,830 odd meters is pretty good altitude for launching from. The question is, will it be enough to enable me to get this thing into orbit and to bring my Kerbals back to their spacecraft waiting up there? Well, we'll find out. Notice the waggly tail technique that I'm using to accelerate up this steep hill. It works rather well, yes? Also note that the seat at the front isn't actually straight. I somehow managed to not put that on straight. We'll get a closer look at this. But yes, fishtailing it all the way up to the top. In fact, let's take a look at this seat. We're just going to tip over the tip here so that we're actually pointing downhill a little. Once we're pointing downhill, that's the perfect place for us to actually get onto the edge here. It's actually easier to get up these ladders when we are going downhill because that means we're kind of leaning forwards a little, but we still have to muck around. But there we go. Look. Oh, lots of falling around as we're just walking over surfaces here. But we do make it to the roof. And we can let him drive for a while. Jebediah Kerman is willing to relinquish the controls to the guy sitting outside because he needs a rest or something. Yeah, also, his seat does pull a little to the side. And there we go. Again, wobble, wobble, wobble to get the thing going fast. 16 kilometers to go, and he's still happy with his driving. Again, note the time. It's taking a really, really, really long time. Oh, look at the true majesty of this mountain. We can but appreciate it as we climb this Himalayan-sized artifact on the surface of Eve. Actually, it's not nearly that big. Anyway, yes, we get there. We are ready to return. But of course, what we need to do is, once we've confirmed that this is okay, we can proceed with the rest of the mission, which means we are free to explore until the launch window comes around. But we got some tires to repair, and then we are free to do what we will. So that was the whole drive to deposit the lander here. I think it's high enough up, but I won't be sure until I launch. But we'll try that in future episodes. Until then, I am Scott Manley. Fly safe.